Hello, welcome to Spell Day. We're covering a spell every single day of the year from the 5e PHB plus 3. Those specialty spells are homebrew spells. We're at plus 2 at the moment. You can head back in the playlist to find them. And today's spell is See Invisibility. What? You're not seeing anything? Well, since it's See Invisibility, I thought I'd put a clip in the ethereal realm. Look, it's really hard to find a clip on something you're not supposed to. Second level divination, cast have 1 action, range of self, components verbal, somatic material, a pinch of talc, and a small sprinkling of powdered silver. Duration, 1 hour. For the duration, you see invisible creatures and objects as if they were visible, and you can see into the ethereal plane. Ethereal creatures and objects appear ghostly and translucent. So this initial recording was lost to some tech difficulties, so I'm just gonna say what I remember saying again. I thought this was a higher level, and I also forgot the Ethereal Plane was thrown into this. There's actually a lot going for this spell. The question is the campaign, that's the big one, and setting for that matter, but it's how often are you going to bump into invisible objects or people, or things on the Ethereal Plane, or if there's anything really there that's been fleshed out. Because that can change quite a bit depending on the setting or campaign. Setting as in just general stuff of like, okay, how easily accessible is invisibility, or how common is it implemented on both objects and people, and when it comes to the ethereal plane, is it actually fleshed out? Does it have an impact on what's going on? Is there stuff actually there, or is it just for those spell effects? Which can vary quite wildly. So the setting one, that's the initial, and then when it comes to campaign, it's, sure, the setting might not deal with it that often, but if your campaign deals with magocracy or magical assassins, they might be using invisibility all the time. Or different things from the air elemental plane that you can't quite see. Ghosts especially, you know, hopping between the ethereal. Oh, phase dogs, and no, or is it blink dogs and phase spiders? Though, like having this in that fight would be great. Or if things like that are really common in the setting, or game you're fighting in. Visible objects though, I'm not sure how often I've had just invisible objects, because the invisibility spell at base is just a person. I didn't really think about it being applied to objects that often. And the fact that it mentions it in this spell means that's a precedent, is that certain objects can just be made invisible by themselves, not a person holding it. Now yeah, maybe not by a spell, though some spells would probably do that, but in the sense of, you can even make a magic item that turns itself invisible, other rituals, you know, various things. I mean, illusion can cover a lot of this. Though it doesn't see through illusions, this isn't true sight. It's specifically invisible. And then seeing into the ethereal plane. Which, might I add, is ridiculous because there's no limit on how far you can see into the ethereal plane. It's not like detect magic, nor is it with invisibility. As far as your character's sight can go when this spell is on them, they can see invisible and ethereal things. You can go up to a mountain range, cast this, and you can see the ethereal plane overlaid on everything before you up until the horizon. Depending on the setting, that might be really, really good to have. Because that's the thing is, I thought this was a higher level. And with a gold cost component. I only have like 5 gold, what I thought originally, but I thought the powdered silver and talc was that. But no, it's not listed, and it's not consumed either. Even if you do put a price to it. The issue is itself, which kinda stinks, but, you know, keep it on yourself, so a bit more reliant on wizards. You can't give this to other, like the fighter to go and fight something invisible. You have to kind of tell, I mean, you can still tell them where it is, but they're still gonna have the issues of hitting it. Same thing with ethereal things. But second level and an hour duration without concentration, meaning this is, you can, okay. When it came to Sanctuary, that you had to know you were in a combat. Because you couldn't cast that too far ahead because it was only a minute, even though it wasn't concentration. This isn't concentration, and it lasts an hour, meaning you can cast this like heading into a dungeon for the first time, or if you're just curious walking around a noble's estate to see if anything appears. Exploration is now something you can use with this, or is something you can use this in. It's not just a combat scenario. If it was just a combat scenario focus, then it would have only been a minute. An action as well, so you don't have to do it as a ritual ahead of time, you can still use this combat-wise because you can cast it quickly. 1 action, done. You're ready to go. You're ready to see things. Whether that's for exploring, you're under time pressure of finding this invisible item within this desk or shop, or cast it in the middle of combat because there's invisible things killing people. Something lurking in the ethereal. But being able to add, because meta-wise, at a table, if someone casts this, then a DM taking away phase spiders or blink dogs to then place back when they finally pop back in, you can just keep them on the board for the entire party to see, because you can just say that your character's calling them out. And for simplicity's sake on actually using this spell. Though again, that's also how easy is the access, and back to the setting thing before we leave, world building wise, that's also to the setting question of how often is invisibility a thing? on both objects and people or locations, and then how often is the ethereal plane bumping, or etherealness effects bumping into a campaign and common setting as well. Because that's the thing is, while some of those later spells, like etherealness is a high level spell, See Invisibility is second level. Like a basic training court mage or some minor hedge wizard will likely be able to cast this. That's a really common spell. Not as common as first, but it's not that far. Because it's so reliable and easy to get and not concentration to use, maybe there's additional features or things that are toyed with. Total implications, however, come down to setting. Just how often do those two effects, invisibility and etherealness, come up? 5 out of 10. Now, before you go questioning it, this is an amazing spell. Like, it's a low level, ease of access, it's not a heavy gold, it's not even a gold cost component, really. It lasts for an hour without concentration, it's an action to cast, it's easily accessible. And allows you to see invisible and ethereal creatures, which is a boon. Like, True Sight can handle that, and some Blind Sight in some cases, but being able to see those with a second level spell? That's good. The issue is its utility. So, its ease of access and what it can do and counteract, it would be rated really high. But it's just too niche in most campaigns. In a setting where you're dealing with ethereal creatures, or things that use the ethereal, or invisibility is quite common, amazing. That would be way higher. Maybe even 9 or 10, depending on the setting or how prevalent it is. But because these things aren't even that common in base fantasy, or even the base 5e settings, on how common you're bumping into these sort of effects, it's got to go to 5, middle of the road. It's great when you need it. You don't need it that often. Because because we covered Scry recently, that, yeah, if you can see invisible things, you can see the sensor. You have to line up the hour window of this with the 10-minute window of when they're casting Scry. You could be paranoid because it's low enough level and just keep casting See Invisibility every once in a while, and maybe catch it, but I don't know. Bit niche, but makes you wonder.